Not quite €1, but heavily haggled. I've got the skill set. Renovate an abandoned ruin from scratch. School holidays. I can live the dream in school holidays. I'm over 18. I'm not needing full-time education. It only takes you a year or two to realise that full-time teaching, saying the same thing to the curriculum on one subject, is going to drive you mental. And doing that for decades, you're going to get repetitive strain injury of the mind. That's without taking into account extended school holidays macro build project. A DIY project using found materials. A reuse renovation. Anyone that's been to art school will be familiar with art projects with found materials. Supersized here for you. But the grand concept is going to get compromised, but not tainted almost immediately. My welding's okay, it's not shell-like, but then few are such able. But I don't do it very often, I'm not hugely confident that it's going to be as good as a professional. There's also the cutting of thick steel and drilling what I'm trying to get at. I'm making excuses for myself. It would have been possible to recycle 203 by 133 steel beams, cut them into splices, and drill and weld on end plates. But I bought them. Having somewhere to do it is partly the thing, but I'd have done it on a street. But in all likelihood, to get the number of beams, it would have taken a fair amount of time, and some of them would have likely been bent, and I'd have compromised in order to recycle. When people do strip-outs of big industrial places, they're not overly careful about reuse, and beams get twisted, even steel. My biggest bugbear is that I bought them from the wrong person, really. There's one place that's half the price of another. And then that bigger place that I got them from managed to do one of the dozen, 50mm short, which almost compromised my bearing. So that's one aspect of concept compromise. This is the first thing that I'm putting in. After the windows, and the windows were brand new from a Brico place as well. Windows to keep out those winds. Vive le vent, no thank you. I understand from a South Korean chap that I met while travelling around Australia that if you get engaged or married on a very windy day, it's auspicious for a passionate relationship. I don't know, some relationships in the Alps might not last very long. I'm hoping these steel splice beams are going to be there for another 500 years. The other compromise is both work and materials. It's clear after a few trips that just scavenging isn't going to be enough. I've been quite fruitful. I found a manufacturer of polyisocyanate, enamelled steel or aluminium-clad faced panels. Wouldn't that be great if you could have like Facebook slogans enamelled into your ceiling that you look up to when you're in your rooftop mezzanine? I couldn't think of anything worse. But I do like my friends welcome family by appointment enamel souvenir. Souvenir is a French word for memory, it's strange. So, a hobby of driving by anywhere and seeing a skip. You see the skip, you stop, you look inside. You have to leave yourself a little bit of time when you're going to work in the morning. Things aren't necessarily going to be there when you go back. If you get the time to ferret it up to the top because you see it sticking out, someone else will have nabbed it off the top. If you've struck a chord with a local builder, they may be laughing at you. Yes, you can take stuff in the night. Every time you ask, people are more than happy to save a little skip space and a little bit of money. Big projects are a little bit more concerned about whether you're a gypsy or not. After sharpening their knives for them, you're going to come back and rob the heavy machinery. But what I'm getting to is that 2 weeks at Christmas, 2 weeks at Easter, let's stretch it, double it to 12 weeks over the summer. Supply teaching isn't giving me enough time to do the job. Yes, I can go at it 12 hours a day, but it's also not supplying enough materials. No, I wish. I've noticed years ago that there's such a job as a transfer driver. You'd have thought chauffeur would be the title, and it is when you come to laying it down on paper with your prenom for the prefecture. But there's so many British people get jobs in the Alps. It's almost like a colony in itself, driving people from 3 airports to ski resort. I could do that, as Yossa Hughes said in the 1980s. That's right, years. Boys from the black stuff. So I could work similar income for more intense hours in the winter months, the same as teaching, and have more time to devote to the project. And while I'm there, I've got evenings. So you've got times when you've got to factor in what if it doesn't work out and you're holding it up in midair. But just don't take on those tasks. And ditching teaching and taking on menial tasks in the did you go to university stakes that teaching English as a foreign language demands. Evenings and midweek works well for a little while. Saturday is always changeover day, you see. But then F asterisk star at symbol K before COVID, and I'm back in the game. Told me that beforehand. And those strategies that my father taught me, like bang me and my brother together, slap a 9-year-old so it rings, never did me any harm in terms of behaviour management. But the fall line of skiing, how you take the radius and you're much faster as you're directly pointing downhill on the radius. Finding a balance is what I'm talking about. You're in the van with these many and varied customers from many and varied walks of life. For, on average, an hour and a half, shall we say. It's more or less. Can be 2.5 hours. People that you can chat to like your enthusiastic best mate, and Israeli settlers that are worse than Protestant Irish, and you get the Catholic Protestant mix on some clients. Oh, and then there's the multicultural co-drivers, swarthy southern Eastern Europeans. It's an education, but it feels like such an indulgence, though you know you've got the same money. You've got almost 9 months over the summer, spring, autumn, to indulge yourself in your DIY indulgences of renovations. But then you start running out of materials and COVID comes along. The only job you can get in COVID, construction. This isn't necessarily a bad thing at all. Big jobs. Big jobs brings big metre squared area of materials. That's what you need when you've got 55 metres squared times 4 plus 30 metres squared mezzanine. But the bulk of that material, it means a garage in one country, and it'll fill the barn, big chunks of the barn, in the other country. Have you figured out what European destination is within easy reach of Britain yet? I know I thought it was going to be the Dolomites, but no, it's the French Alps. Who got the sweepstake win on that? Gambler mentality amongst construction workers. It's difficult to live with. But then just the same, similar types can get a much better laugh. And they've learnt a few things since they were the fit kids at school. How they learnt that quite often is dabbling in drugs, but that's irrelevant. Study drugs. This seems to be a Nicole Kidman thing. I'd never heard of them. So I'd given up on Airbnb for my spare property. I live in a town with a fair few festivals. It works well for Airbnb, but Airbnb only works for the renter. The host is left vulnerable. I only ever used to rent to anyone that was willing to send my Airbnb account email a copy of their passport, just like any Airbnb or hotel anywhere in the world. They insist on your passport. The website, you'd have to take them to court if you wanted to take someone to court for leaving bodily fluids all around the place and wrecking the place. Yes, it's possible to put in insurance claims and things like that, but Yep, you realised. I want to have some semblance of control in my life, because you know what's coming. £60 a night for one, £60 a night for four. It doesn't make any difference to me, really. Oh, it screws the competition. And to get that income for most nights of most days of the year, you got 4 persons wear and tear, not one. And you know how on eBay, if you put your bid in at the last second, the Skype? No, not the Skype, the snipe? No, that's a negative bitching type word. On Airbnb, there's a little game people play that you, as a host, get the opportunity to criticise the guest, and the guest gets the opportunity to criticise the accommodation. Last minute of the 24-hour window, in comes the bitching from the guest, and you don't have a leg to stand on. Like a game show or something. You lose. So that property and parents' garage gets filled with construction materials. Now it's a town centre Airbnb that was doing really quite well. Is it better off as somewhere that I'm filling up 2 flights of stairs with storage? The clutter of a hoarder? It extracts a little bit of shame from me for me to say that I'm a hoarder. So please don't relish in it too much. Hoarder. I'll try and not say it for a little while. Now I'm not travelling enough from the source of the construction materials to the place in order to transport them. Now I should have a more local project and I should be able to apply this theory, but you can. But it's only 1,000 miles. Yes, I could go with trailer. I bought a hookup. No, we're not back on hoarding. I bought a tail hitch. Ditch that thought. I had a dinted bumper anyway, so, well, not necessary. Let's have a tow bar fitted. But a trailer adds more to your cross-channel ferry fee. A van is a car, really. Yes, I do nail it down to which is the most economical van in terms of fuel efficiency. Well, it depends how tall they are and it depends how narrow they are, so I'm with a Volkswagen Transporter. For life. Oh, I'm so street. On the sides of the streets, through French towns, there's little GRP children. On the sides of the roads, there's little fiberglass children. Big, chunky things they are. You'd think they were obese, really. They frighten the life out of you when you're doing 90 in a 40. 90 miles an hour in a 40 kilometres an hour zone. And there's a fair chance that my dad made him in his fiberglassing. A French child that my dad made earlier as part of his job. Something to aspire to as a secondary part of the DIY process. International family structure. Instigating the cross-channel ferry reuse of materials isn't without raising a few eyebrows at customs. French don't give a merde, and the English are only concerned about what's coming in, not what's leaving. So we're entering a new phase in the project's development. Construction work in Britain for the length of the project, you would think, but what's the determining factor? Well, it's interpersonal. It's not that I'm too hyper too often to get on their nerves, but it's that I'm too wise too often, offer too many suggestions, perhaps. I'm managing the managers in an easy come, quite subordinate role.
Crafting things is supposed to be
still,
very good for your
seems
mental
I'm
health.
quite grateful for having
Such a big project. I'm
materials
very
recycled. And
bon
they've got
santé.
skips the size of your flat, your apartment. They are still happy to see the little bit less going in. Now on one, my demise was escalated because a forklift driver was not wanting to crush down a beautiful sunny day to help himself to resources around the site. I didn't get blamed, they knew who it was, but it was just bitching. Because he thinks he can blame another. Why not just take the learner driver rather than the horoscopically challenged? I'll tell you why. Liabilities, when you're with me, I'm getting something for nothing, and it's too much of a good thing. I'm packed to the rafters, even though I'm making regular journeys every holidays. €400, 400 pound round trip over a weekend is possible when you've just got sick to death of driving round and shagging your van with a fully overloaded ton of treasure. But then that's wasted embodied energy, isn't it? And that's the concept. If I'm transported and I'm not doing any work, it's wasted embodied energy. Do a search, and there's like a hippie woman doing massage and stuff, embodied energy, searching your chakras with her fist, all knotted and pummeling. But embodied energy is the kilojoules that it takes in fuel, transport, manufacture of materials, and everyone getting to site to build a project. And this takes so much longer than the 25 years that a mortgage, I think it's sometimes 40 years for a commercial mortgage, allows for. Carbon zero, yes, that's in the lifetime of the building, but it never accounts for the actual building itself, which is embodied energy. Some funkwit has put this woman's massage website up in glorious Google front page to sabotage the environmental movement. No, I love my body, and quite possibly yours. My body is a temple, and in an environment, so much more so. I hope you will agree if you go to my Patreon page. So my 9 months of summer have got me to a juncture. My seasonal sacrifices got me to focus on things that I never thought I'd get round to. Locks are lined through, and while electric's 90% there and only 10% useful, there's the patable and my backable factor. But when you've got all these freebies rolling in, job after job, one to another, it really does subsidise your income, almost to the point of how the architectural jobs were rolling in one after the other once upon a time. And it's difficult to say no to, and just the same as it was difficult to say no, I'd like to do historical vernacular or even church architecture if possible. Could I follow that route rather than follow the money? Having soul, I'd be worse off now than I ought to be. You know how people do this is my crib, let me show you round in architectural digest fashion. There's a few images and videos in this that's a hoarder's crib. It's a slight of shame. I'm doing it to myself, but it's like an anti-polish. Not aligning myself against any Europeans that people disliked enough to bring us Brexit. Anti-smug, shall we say. Any of those hoarder images that you can see. Buildability, versatility, that's what we love. You too could turn your living room into a garage. I'm sure there's people on YouTube that are turning their garages into living rooms and knocking through, but we're doing anti-YouTube influencer. Please like and subscribe. It's one thing having a remote double garage full of tat and a 3-bedroom garage that you navigate with a shimmy, but when you've got it on your site, it's a headache. Yes, you arrive with a headache after 1,000 miles of driving through the night, and then you offload, you make compromises, but you're pretty disciplined. But 90% of what you offload is in the way of the next task that you've got in mind on your... I won't tarnish you with my tainted love of principles. I'm following the reuse, repurpose concept to the max. The site is now piled high to the rafters. That old sofa from my flat 20 years ago, it's oversized. You can lay flat head to toe. Rare thing, I don't want to get rid of that. That's now got granite worktops and Geneva IKEA wardrobe and kitchen units stacked on it. Duck feather cushions. Flat. Those walls that you were umming and ahhing whether to keep authentic and cover with glass or skim with lime have got shit stacked against it. Those floors that you've put in, you've still got to jack 'em up or jack 'em down an inch. And that windy scissor that you stick underneath your axle, let's just keep our fingers crossed that it's engineered to overload when you're on a rickety old ancient ladder 2 stories up, winding the crank to the max. Yes, I have snapped a rung and dropped down 2 or 3 rungs of a ladder before my fall is broken. Or is that fail? My fail is broken in YouTube speak. Grenier, loft space enclosed with the pitch timbers and trusses. Glass has a lot of embodied energy inside it. It can be recycled, obviously, but that involves quite a lot of energy. I'm finding and using as big sheets of double glazing and single toughened glass as possible. Not so selflessly as you might realise, but I've got this love of the rough render internally. The lime render that looks like it's just been thrown on by one of those big long-handled shovels. And it's got that delicate, time-served protective crust on it, the darker lime. But it does rub off with a bit of effort, perhaps with timber to a dado rail and then a sheet of clear glass above that, expressing the traditional materials and the original agricultural nature of the property. Proudly. That does give us a grey aspect to our colour scheme, which I'm planning on it anyway, but I think it does need to be accented subtly. But glass is very useful as dividing walls inside, as well as this lining the inside of the envelope design. Double glazing used internally to separate rooms has the added benefit that you're only really heating one room that you're using. And it also separates cooking smells. A living dining kitchen is all very well, but everything coloured to a greater or lesser extent over time with greases. And then there's the garum, the fish sauce smell, which ends up as a beautiful meal, but you don't want it permeating the whole household. Then there's the dividing wall from the communal staircase that faces south, and you want as much of that light in as possible, don't you? Yes, you can have privacy manifestations. Plastic, sticky back plastic, to some of us, just a film over the glass. I'm wearing my Blue Peter badge proudly. But recycled whole double glazed panels and toughened glass in large patio door size sheets are a little bit more difficult to talk people out of, because when they remove
by means of charity rather than the government,
thick enough air gap or something, or the patio door's been broken into, or they're replacing aluminium with thermally broken Greenland timber frames, or even just that the lock has broken in the plastic frame. The glazing contractor gets some money from a skipload of little broken diamonds, but they don't really see it as having much value in the transporting, and the weight of it can be a bit of a pain for you. So you can get the old direct from the manufacturer. And then there are buildings that have had secondary glazing on the back of single glazed period sashes, and eventually they've been given or got permission to replace them with standard double glazing. So I've saved them skip space. Yes, I'm like a skip rat, but my meekness, I hope, will have the last laugh. A little bit every day as it comes out. It's heavy, and you can't tie it to the inside of your van quite as you'd like to. You have to span either side to either side with other things so that you can still drive around. And it doesn't swing and smash. But the big sheets I have laid flat in the bottom of the van. 3 double-glazed patio doors without frames on top of each other. Just glass sheet on glass sheet. I got there with 5 out of the 6 fully intact. There was only a little bit of damage on the casualty. And that's with taking a few bumps, surprise, some bumps, and speed. So if you have to lay them flat, it's not the end of the world. But swinging around, no. Load as far forward in the back as possible. It's heavy stuff. You'll be overloaded before you fill the volume. Yes, I'll have to
Faudrait
make
peut-être
my
casser
own
les
to
codes d'une fille
internal
qui l'ouvre, ce
frame.
serait normal.
Yes, I may have to take an angle grinder to the spacer between the pane sheets, but the number of panes of glass of the same dimensions is very important. It's going to look very, well, it's going to look very like you've just reused, reclaimed materials or something, and it doesn't need to. There's all sort of 60s and 70s out in the desert architectural community projects that put glass bottle ends in adobe mud walls and call it a natural lighting feature or something. But there'll be shrink back and drafts, and it does just look like you've put bottles in a mud wall. In this reuse concept, it's important that no one's ever any the wiser. They're allowed to have suspicions here and there, but they wouldn't believe so much of it. And I know you want to pin me down on a percentage, but it's difficult. I've bought multi-foil insulation, and multi-layer foil insulation is a new material. You're not going to get that any way other than new, shop bought. Which reminds me, shops have quite a few refurbs. Shop front signage is often like an enamelled steel. Very useful. So I've got the extra challenge now of integrating a grey colour with a co-op lime green colour that I'm using for framing and support around the big double barn doors, cut in half lengthways, making a 200 by 100 L shape rather than a U shape. Reuse requires creativity. I suppose it also requires compromise.